Welcome back to Star Narratives, the podcast. This is accessible and relatable astrology that teaches you how to support your emotional health using the wisdom of the zodiac. I'm your host, Natha Campanella. Hello. We are in the middle of Pisces season. So we're going to be talking with a guest who is very, very Piscean in nature. Michelle Sinette, I'm going to read this from her site, is a potent channel of divine wisdom anchored masterfully in the physical human experience. Her passion and expertise lies at the intersection of soul and neuroscience, knowing that in the current times, the integration of both is more vital than ever. I really loved getting to talk to Michelle. Being somewhat Piscean myself, I got so many interesting insights as I was listening to her. And, the sound isn't so great, but we can make the best of it, right? So in the interview, we talk about Legacy Cacao, which is a company that Michelle founded. And I mentioned that I had never done a cacao ceremony. And since then, I got to do one, and it was just so cool. I really, really enjoyed it. I did it with Jennah of Aspen Oracle. I'm going to stick her contact information in the show notes. And Jennah is a friend of Michelle's. But everything that we talked about in terms of what cacao feels like, I really experienced. So highly recommend if you guys see when either Jennah is offering another ceremony or you just find ceremonies in your area to check them out. And I know Michelle said to be really mindful of the kind of cacao that you use because they do grow a lot of it with pesticides and whatnot. And I will link the Legacy Cacao in the show notes as well. So I think that I'm going to leave it at that. This is just a really magical interview. And I suggest that as you listen for answers for yourself because Michelle gives so many of them. And you might even hear answers to questions that you have not asked yet. That's what happened to me. But I just got off of the call with her really buzzing. And I listened to it again today and heard different things. So you know how that goes. I feel like that's the indication of a really good interview. All right, enjoy. Hi, Michelle. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
I'm excited to be talking to you. Are you still in Telluride?
I'm not.
Oh, okay.
My wife and I just literally packed up our house. So we got a message in meditation that it was time to get off the mountain. So we ordered the moving truck and was waiting for Source to kind of drop in where. And the moving truck showed up and we didn't have a where yet. So we put it in storage.
Wow. Okay. Well, I like that you're listening to your intuition. And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking today about because I invited you on the podcast to really talk about some of the Pisces energy in your chart. You have a lot of it, but even without looking at your chart, it's sort of exploring some of the work that you do and exploring your online presence, there is a lot that is connected to this, to the Pisces archetype of spirituality and mysticism, magic, mystery. And so I just want to ask you to just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll dive more into Pisces stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. If I were really to center into who I am, I would say I'm a teacher. And there's a lot of ways I express that. I do individual spiritual mentoring, and I work with a lot of corporations and the executive teams to really move their business back in alignment with consciousness, to start running their business with their intuition open and listening, and essentially move that company back into alignment and just see that the flow from that far exceeds anything that they're doing trying to force it. And I also, one of my passion projects right now, we opened a company called Legacy Cacao. So it's ceremonial cacao, and it's from Guatemala. And we're the only ones in the world allowed to take this cacao out of the country. And they've been protecting it for thousands of years. So they truly, this is from the original grandmother lineage trees. And they believe that anyone that has this plant medicine in their body one time will completely reunite with the truth of who they are. And from that place, what's united within, we unite with each other as one tribe, and we'll start living in harmony with the planet.
Wow. I was, my mind started racing as you were talking. Cacao is something that I have not explored, but it has been on my list of things that I'm really wanting to experience. And it reminds me, and I'm not sure, are you familiar with Teal Swan's work?
Yeah, a little bit.
So she had, I can't remember if it was a blog post or maybe it was one of her talks that she gave, but she talked about cacao, and the energy around cacao was that when you used it, that it sort of reactivated all of your chakras and got them spinning in the right direction and kind of revitalized them. And so I'm curious from your perspective whether that sounds accurate or whether you have anything that you want to add to that for anybody that has never heard of cacao or the cacao ceremonies that might be interested.
Absolutely. You know, for me, I have a passion for soul and science. I'm an intuitive, I'm a medium, but I really love where soul and science come together, that sweet spot. And science is always, you know, way far behind what we already know in our indigenous wisdom. So it's funny, it's always trying to catch up. But when it comes together, it's so beautiful. And cacao is one of those places that is actually coming together, and not all cacao is the same. This is one of those products that you have to be sure where you're getting it from, because almost all of cacao is genetically modified, and most, like 70%, is done with child slavery. So don't just go out and buy it if you don't know where it's coming from. But the plant itself is actually, you know, it was more valuable than gold at one point. And there's about 700 nutrients in our cacao. And it's safe for babies, it's safe for pregnant mamas, it's beautiful for everyone, which I love because there's so many issues right now digestively and with diet for people. And there's so many people with restricted diets. But this is something that everyone can sit down and enjoy together. And yes, it does get all of your chakras spinning in the correct direction. It clears the nervous system. It's a heart opener. So the physical heart as well as the spiritual heart opens. It goes right to the pineal gland. It boosts your serotonin. I mean, it's like on and on and on. The science of it, it oxygenates your body better than any other live food source. It has more nutritional value than any live food source on the planet. But the spiritual possibilities, it's very gentle. You know, there's other plant medicines that are kind of like a kick to the third eye. But this one is really sweet and gentle, and only women make our cacao, and it's literally done by the priestess according to the Mayan calendar. And if you give it permission, it'll go not only through your physical body as an adaptogen and remove anything that doesn't belong. It's part of Japanese medicine. So it'll go in and hunt anything that's not part of your true nature, whether it's in your energetic body, your karmic body, your family lineage. It'll go in and hunt that and clear it out.
Wow. Okay. Yes, I am sold.
We'll have a cup together.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So, you know, we're talking about Pisces, and Pisces as an archetype for anyone listening that isn't super familiar. Pisces is that part of us that is connected to spirit, to source energy, to our true nature. And those of us that have a strong Pisces influence in our chart, like you do, Michelle, your sun is in Pisces and it's in the 12th house. And the 12th house is where Neptune and Pisces traditionally live. So it's this double signature. But, you know, people with a lot of Pisces, they kind of naturally have these capabilities of, you know, some of this stuff. You mentioned some really beautiful words. You know, you're an intuitive, you're a medium. These are very Piscean things. And there's some connection to Pisces and spiritual possibilities. Now, you know, we aren't always, even when we have a lot of this Pisces archetype in our chart, it's not that we come out of the womb and we're, you know, wise and intuitive and we know exactly what's going on. It can be this process that we have to really move through in our lives, where we have to bring things into consciousness, because, you know, Pisces can also have a lot of unconsciousness involved as well. And so I'm curious, Michelle, you have this really cool kind of life story that you talk about on your website. You know, birthed onto your path. I'm just quoting you here. Birthed onto your path through several death experiences, coma, healing of immense wounding and trauma. You're a former law enforcement officer. You've got this really rich past, and I'm curious if you want to share some of how you, I guess, how, you know, how you got to where you are now, or even, you know, what has it been like for you doing this transition into, you know, starting out as a young person with presumably all of this potential, and then having to live your life and getting to where you are now?
Yeah, it is a journey. And I never want to say what it is for everyone. Some people sit under a tree and then they move right into their enlightenment, or whatever words you want to use. And I do want to say with words, if anyone hears a word that triggers them, then put a different word there. Because with words, all of the English language is, it's such a baby language, and it's such a small box to try to stuff everything that is source and celestial. And so there's really no words to truly describe it. But on this journey, as a little, my intuition's been wide open my whole life. And I think a big part of that was because when I was 2, I was in the hospital for almost a year. I was in like one of those air tents where they like reach through the plastic arms to touch you. And I really, you know, everything that's happened in my life was very intentional. But I don't believe that anything happened to me. Everything happened for me. And I even knew it at the time, which I'm grateful for. But I think at 2 years old, being in the hospital for a year, I didn't get domesticated so often the way many of us do. I didn't really get tied in with pleasing family or the rules of a family or the rules of your community or how I should be. I was kind of free to be myself. And so as a 2-year-old, I was like seeing their kids. I was seeing my kids. I would leave my body and travel with doctors and go home and see what their life was like. And I didn't know this wasn't normal. This wasn't everyone's experience. So it was a little shocking and a little harsh when I came out, because I didn't understand that that's not the common experience. So I think that really played a big part. But as I got into like 8, 9, 10, I actually thought my intuition was a curse. I thought that God hated me because I would see things, but you know, in my new, but really it was more remembering of who I am and what I'm possibly capable of. There was this, it's kind of low hanging fruit, right? The trauma and drama and things like that are kind of denser energies. So when your intuition is opening, sometimes that's where you land first. So I'd like see a house burning with a child in it, but I couldn't see the actual address. And then I'd see it in the paper the next day. I'd just be heartbroken. I didn't understand why I'm being shown these things, but not enough information to help. And then as it opened more, I got the information, but then nobody believed me. So it was a period of frustration and feeling like actually like it was a curse. So I took a hard turn. It went very like type A, very masculine energy. I'm going to make my life happen. Especially back then, no one really got paid for being intuitive. That wasn't a real career. You know, all of that kicked in. And essentially, at 14, I died. I had a horse accident. I died several times because I was up in the mountains and they were trying to transport me. And that was a huge moment where things changed for me because I was in a coma for a month. When I woke up, I was blind for a while. But when I died, I didn't want to come back. I wanted to stay home. And it was really like a board meeting with, you know, some of the teachers that we all know who walked this earth. But it was like a board meeting, and they were telling me, you know, that I'm going back, that this is why I'm here, this is what I'm going to do. And I think that really it was a compassionate thing. Like I was able to stay in the coma until I could work through that and be ready to come back. You know, it gives you a break because here on Earth, they're taking care of your human temple for you. They're taking care of your respiration, your heart rate, your temperature, your feeding. So I didn't have to like care for the human temple. I could just be home for a little while, and then I came back in, and that's where it really changed everything. I knew that the only way I could live my life is by listening to my guides. And I still tried to straddle for a little while. Like I was really pushing, trying to be a judge. And so then I started like doing Let's Make a Deal with Source. So I was like, well, I'll still do law, but I'll help children with it. I'll use my intuition to help children. And got stopped in my tracks again right before it. Because my guides, I can't say I didn't know. My guides talked to me word for word conversations. So they were telling me all along, do not go to law school. And right before I was leaving for law school, then I had another injury, head injury. I was in the hospital for a year and a half. I had to learn how to walk, talk, and sit in a chair without falling over. And so that was kind of the final time where I just surrendered. It's like, all right, I only work for you, Source. Where will you have me be? What will you have me do?
Yeah, wow. So many questions. Thank you for sharing that as well. You know, I think that I hear this a lot, and I know from my own experience too, that the sensitivities, the psychic sensitivities can feel like such a burden, especially when you're not really adept at how to use them or how to get a little bit of space from them. You know, I'm curious, do you have any, for people that are, you know, aware that they have guides, but are somewhat unable to connect with them or sort of hear some of the messaging that is available to them, do you have any insight or advice for how people could get a little bit more connected with their guides?
Yes, you know that this is a really important question because my personal ethics and belief on this, I'm not I'm not different than anybody else in a lot of ways. I happen to be able to tap in for everyone, and not that's not everyone's role, so not everyone can do that. But every single person on this planet is important. Every single, like, cacao is a beautiful tool, but you don't need it. You don't need crystals. You don't need to go through anyone else to connect to source. Every single person is intuitive. Every single person is capable of connecting to their guides and hearing them, unless they've chosen a life as part of their destiny. What they're studying is, to be disconnected from that for a while, but they're still intuitive. They're just playing that out. And if you are starting to, like, you're hearing little whispers, and you're not sure if it's your brain or is it your guides, there's a few things. First of all, always state, like, if you hear any little connection, always check in. Always ask, are you from the light? Because you can get, like, I personally don't connect to people who transition or guide very often because they're a terrible source of information usually. I like to write to guides and source. So first check, are you from the light? Second check in, is it in highest and best good? Like, whatever question you want to ask, is it truly in the highest and best good of all? If it's in your highest and best good, it's in the highest and best good for everyone. And so always check into those things as your intuition is opening up more and more. Also, as it's opening, just because you know something doesn't mean you're supposed to say it. So don't, it's kind of like when you open up, you turn on your radio and you only have one station, but you start to open up all these stations, you may get a bunch of information. It doesn't mean you're supposed to do anything with it. It doesn't mean you're supposed to say anything. Divine timing is really important. But if you're at that very beginning stage where you're like, I don't know, I think this might be something, bigger than me, not just generated from my brain. What I'll say is that the brain is very loud, and the soul is often a whisper. Your guides are often a whisper at first. And so it's an exercise of turning the volume down on the brain and turning the volume up. And you can physically picture this. When your brain is noisy, you can start turning the volume down on that. You start turning the volume down on your heart connection to source. Because our heart is, I don't think most people know, we have 3 brains. There's a brain in our gut, there's the brain that we call the brain, and then there's our heart is actually a brain. There's neurons in our heart. And the heart is our most powerful brain, which is partially why the brain that we call the brain, it's growing and growing because it's trying to outpower the heart. But the heart is your most powerful brain. So this is where you're going to connect to your guides, to source from, with your heart. And you can play with it. Like, you can just ask me all day long. I do this to this day. Every time my phone rings, I ask, is it in highest and best good answer this phone right now? And whatever answer I get, that's what I go with. So it's also just being playful with it, practicing and trusting. And if you're off, you'll feel it. You'll know, and you'll adjust that dial on the radio, and then pretty soon you're right on the channel.
Oh, thank you. So, astrologically, and I liked what you said earlier about it is hard to just put these things into words because our language is so limited to everything that's there. And it's the same with astrology. And with astrology, when we're talking about Pisces, right across the zodiac, in what we call opposition, which is any time that we have two signs that are across from each other, is the sign Virgo. And something that you said really reminded me of this opposition that we all hold. You know, we all have this operating within us, where when we get disconnected from spirit and we're trapped in our mind, so spirit being Pisces and being trapped in our mind is very Virgo. Virgo has us constantly organizing and criticizing and analyzing. That, you know, and it kind of reminded me of what you just said here, is that we have to, the more aware that we can be of any imbalance, right? When we find ourselves really hooked into our brain and our mind messaging, that can be the loudest, and that there's something so valuable about turning down that volume and turning up that more Pisces energy of connecting in with what is. And I like your advice about, you know, asking, is this in my highest good? Is this from the light? Because that's where I get a little bit messed up sometimes, is that it is confusing. Like, what is my brain? What's just my brain and my inner critic and my anxiety doing in terms of trying to guide me? You know, I think our inner critic is trying to help us. You know, our brain is trying to help us, but it's not always from, it's not always the best advice, right?
Yeah, you know, thank you for saying that. It's so important. Like for me, when I was too far in my Virgo, I got a head injury. And no one has to do it the way I did it. It doesn't have to have struggle or suffering or any hard experiences. But in fact, like, I went through it so that I could invite people to maybe just choose some ease and grace and to show them how to do that. But yeah, that inner critic, you know, some tips if it's your brain or it's your soul or it's your guides. The soul will never say should, need to, have to. Those are always brain words. The soul will never shame you. Generally, if the thought is dropping your frequency, that's not from the soul or from your guides. So if the message is dropping your frequency, if you're feeling heavier or sadder or, you know, a density, that message is not from your soul or from your guides.
Yes. And so that Virgo archetype, and you have a lot of Virgo in your chart too, Michelle, and that's, as you're talking, I'm noticing that, and I see this a lot. So people will have oppositions in their chart, and it's like you have. So you have your Pisces sun and your Virgo moon. Sun and moon are so personal. They're such intricate parts of what makes us us. And when we have them in opposition in our chart, we usually get to go through some big, like a big balancing act where we're going, you know, maybe we're really far on one side and then we switch and we're really far on the other. But ultimately, as we're learning to bring those two things into balance, we're doing it because we can, you know, perhaps move forward and be a teacher, be a healer, be somebody that can bring the gifts of having learned how to balance and disseminate them out into the world. And sometimes that is in really small ways, right? Sometimes that's just we're helping our children or we're helping our partners. And then sometimes it's in bigger ways, like what you're doing, where you're actually out in the world guiding, you're acting as a guide and really showing people how to, this difference between all of the brains. And I love that. I've never heard it put that way. The three brains, the guts, the head, and the heart. Like, wow, what an amazing concept. That makes so much sense to me and probably to many people listening. It's like, oh, of course that's what's going on. How did I get to this age without even really being able to see that? So thank you.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important what you do. Because if people understand what's in their chart, what we understand, we can balance, we can master, we can remember. But if you don't even know what's in your chart, you don't even know what you're working with. And like for me, my soul very specifically chose to have Pisces and Virgo because one of my desires in this lifetime was to not be so like airy fairy that I was no earthly good. And the Virgo really helps me ground here and bring it instead of just being up, like I said, when I went home on the other side of the veil, I just wanted to stay. So the Virgo, I believe in, please direct me on this, but I believe that Virgo is such, once you're not swinging between them, is so important because it really allows me to be rooted here, allows the inspiration that comes in from spirit to come through into creation. That Virgo is a big part of supporting that.
Yes, and yeah, great point is that that Pisces energy can be so valuable, but it's intangible. We can't hold it in our hands. It is not. It's nothing specific, and so it can be confusing. It can be out of our control. And I'm imagining trying to grasp onto a cloud. We can see the cloud in the sky. It's clear that it's there, but you go and try to grab it, and it's not there. But the Virgo is that place that brings us back down into the ground, that says, this is something that you can hold in your hand. This is something that is really happening. And when we can use them both, because both are so valuable, that's really where we're able to kind of have the enrichment, I think, that a lot of us are seeking when we're talking about those two differences between earth and spirit.
Yeah, this is a visual that really helps me, and maybe your listeners might connect to it, because the first thing that what will happen when we're sharing stuff like this, you're raising your frequency. As soon, like in this conversation, anyone that's listening to it, their frequency is being raised. And the first thing that happens is the brain contracts because it thinks it's in danger. So one of the first things the brain will do is say, how? Or it'll pull you in the past, or it'll pull you in the future to try to move you into overwhelm so that you shrink back down, you drop your frequency back down. And when the brain is asking how, it's really important to address it and say, my soul already knows. And the visual that I use sometimes when my brain is really like chattery, and like you said, it's doing what it's doing because of the program we put in so far. But it's designed to support our soul. So once you understand that, I picture like if our life journey is a car driving down the road. If the brain is driving the car, you're letting a toddler drive the vehicle of your life. But you don't kill the toddler. You don't throw the toddler out the window. You pick up the toddler and say, I love you. You've done such a good job getting me to this point, and you can relax now. My soul's got it. And I put the brain in the car seat in the back where toddlers belong, and I allow my soul to start driving my life.
Yes. I mean, this is so similar to things that I find myself saying to clients, is that, yes, our operating system gets stuck in being little, where we are relating to the world like we are the child that we were with our parents, or, whatever was happening. And the most important thing through any of this kind of work, whether you're working with a healer or a therapist or an astrologer or a guide of any sort, is to really begin to notice where that inner child that is still relating to the world from the age of 3 or 13 or 8, all of these ages that we kind of get, where let's just say traumatic things happen, and then we kind of go back there in stress. How can we put our higher selves, our soul, the part that is now more mature and more knowing, how can we give that part more control and let the young part relax, get in the back? I love it. Here's your sweet child seat. Here's a little glass of juice. And I'm going to have my higher self drive this vehicle moving forward.
And you get to go with me, and I love you.
Yes. Yes, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find myself saying a lot, be the mother or be the father to yourself that your mother and father were not able to be. And, we know what our soul really needs. We know what we need to feel nourished and nurtured. And, and so that's part of our job as adults is how can we give that to ourselves? And it does open up so much more, so much more of our ability to really do what our soul wanted to come here to explore and learn and honor in these lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited about cleansing. I just finished a 10-day water fast because I've done, a lot of this work on a soul level and the spiritual level. And I've reprogrammed. My background's in neuropsychology and pharmacology, so I really love the brain-body connection and work to reprogram the brain. But there was actually still something going on in my physical. That the physical somehow was still storing stuff that didn't match my I am. And so with this water fast, I have a brilliant biochemist shaman friend who, and another friend, Dr. Zach Bush, which is absolutely amazing his work. But both of them say that on day 5 of a water fast, you get into your DNA code. So with epigenetics, anything that's been layered on, even while your mom was pregnant. Like my mom was very young. She was in a very, very stressful situation carrying me. And she managed that so beautifully. It's absolutely the best of her ability. But she didn't have access to really good nutrition for herself, And so and then I've had a lot of head injuries and surgeries and all of that. And so it was like, really came down to how do I support my body moving into full alignment to her perfect blueprint. But at day 5, you get to the epigenetics that's coding the DNA strand.